Here is true desecration of the Word of God. The first 5 books of Moses, the scroll of the Torah, the parchment, was taken by the Nazis and made into lampshades, musical instruments, suitcases, wallets, even pads inside the shoes, inner soles, so they could walk on the Jewish Torah. Tonight we're in the Yad Vashem, the Museum of the Holocaust. It's a terrible place. A trip through here lasts your lifetime. We're not exploiting this thing, we're just remembering. It's the most touching and the most heinous act of the enemy in all the 4,000 years of Judaism. We're going to take you through it to show you just exactly what went on. The evidence is all here. The sad thing about this is later they took to making these things out of human skin.
And the Lord said to Abram, "Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever. Arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you."
The museum is organized into photographs with paragraphs of explanation beside them in Hebrew and English. And the reason is to absolutely document it. There still are people alive in the world today who like to say this Holocaust never happened. Well, they should all have to come here and walk past these photostats of telegrams, these photographs of people in the streets with the Jewish stars on, with the Nazi soldiers surrounding them and so on, and worse down the hall that we're going to see. This is the beginning of the Nazi occupation in various countries and how cruel it was. Here in Holland, in Amsterdam, people are wearing the Jewish star. They've been identified. Here's another Jewish star in the photo. They've been concentrated at a railway station. They're going to be taken away to a concentration camp. The next display shows the various kinds of stars that they wore. And you know, here's a thing that is a little like the cross. The very artifact they used to humiliate the people, to put them to death, now becomes their standard. Now the Jewish star is on the flag of Israel. The cross that was supposed to put an end to Christianity is on the steeple of every church. When they wore it in the first place, it was with a feeling of humiliation. Now, of course, with a feeling of pride. In some places, Gentiles wore them as well to protect their Jewish neighbors and friends. We could mention the story of King Christian X of Denmark, who himself, the king of the country, came out on the morning when the Nazis required the Jews to wear the stars with the star on his coat so that his subjects could see that the king was for that day going to pretend to be a Jew. And so all of the Danish people got stars and put them on, and the Nazis were not able to round up the Jews so easily in Denmark. Only 50 people were lost in Denmark because of that hero. Outside, a tree is planted in his honor, and the others, like Corrie ten Boom and so many Christian people, Gentile people that helped the Jews, are commemorated in a garden outside with plaques, a tree planted for each. Well, as we go on, we see street scenes that are horrible. Forced labor here in Warsaw. In some cases, they couldn't wait to get them in the trains and off to the concentration camp, and they're being hanged on the public street with the crowd watching. The sign says in Polish and German, "Forbidden for Jews." And here is a sign on a park. Simply says, entrance to the park is forbidden to Jews. And little by little, it was the park, and then it was the school, and then they could not own any shops, and then finally they were herded into cattle cars. It wasn't that they were transported for some useful purpose. The mania of the thing is they were transported to be executed, but the way they were transported, beaten and starved and shoved into cars meant for animals, standing up shoulder to shoulder for rides of days and days, they weren't in good enough shape to kill when they arrived. Going along, we see the Judenrat, the Jewish government, actually gathered the people, try to cooperate with the Nazis. They didn't understand what was to happen at the other end of the railway line, but they even handed in the names. They tried to appease them in some way. If, in fact, the Jewish people were going to be taken to factories for forced labor, all right, they would cooperate and they would do the labor, and someday the war would be over. They had no idea they were being taken to be executed. Not at this point. And then things went on. Unnecessary humiliation. An Orthodox Jew, his beard to him is a vow with God, from Numbers 6:5. And it's being sheared off by a soldier with a scissors, and another one looking on so that the old man can't resist. And this is actually merciful, because in some cases with their two hands they just yank the beards from the faces of these holy ones. And in this picture here is an Orthodox Jew in full costume. He's wearing his prayer shawl with the fringes hanging in accordance with the scriptures about fringes on our garments to remind us of the law. He's wearing the phylactery on his head, the scroll box, shel rosh, and the shel yad on his arm, the boxes with scripture inside, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And behind him, jeering, kicking him, pushing him, Nazi soldiers, privates, and corporals with the privilege to molest defenseless civilians. It went on every day on the pavements and the streets of the cities of Warsaw and all through Europe. A sad, an embarrassing and humiliating moment in civilized history. The Yad Vashem was a building that had to be built. It's not the pleasantest place in the world, but it is an absolute necessity to document what happened, because it could happen again. And it's not built just to appeal to Jewish minds to say never again, or to appeal to democratic people everywhere, etc., to prevent this thing from flaring up again. It's not even purely Jewish in a sense. It's just to remind the human race what it is capable of. The title Yad Vashem, Yad means hand, and Vashem means and a name. A hand and a name. A hand also is used as a monument, a memorial. And so it's scriptural. I believe out of Isaiah, I will give you a hand or a monument and a name. And so they took that for the name of this one-of-a-kind building. And as you'll see from the pictures, and I don't think I need to describe it much further, it simply documents with any number of artifacts what happened over there. And you know, there are those around who deny that it all happened for purposes of anti-Semitism or whatever. If they could get rid of the Holocaust, then they could make it sound as if Israel really didn't have a right to the land, because in their thinking Israel was merely given the land because of the Holocaust, a kind of international apology for what happened in World War II. They don't realize it's a fulfillment of prophecy, of course, but it must not be denied. It did happen, and those who deny it should be taken by the hand and taken through this place, and let them account then for the telegrams and the photographs and the documents and the governmental signed procedural things for the annihilation of the cream of Europe. There's a section that's almost too much to bear where children's artifacts are shown that were left from the Warsaw Ghetto, from the various concentration camps. And you know, children are children. They draw pictures, they write little poems wherever they are. If you were a child who grew up in the Warsaw Ghetto, then you write about what you see and you think that's what life is. And I have a sheet from a Yad Vashem booklet that we had over there that has some drawings on it and poems. And you know, the drawings are like children usually draw, with butterflies and trees and so on, but there's barbed wire in front of everything, and an angry sun with gritting teeth, and dead butterflies, gallows, birds falling, airplanes, a whipping block. These are the things that children saw. Well, the poem I wanted to share is a very brief and simple one. It's called The Garden. It was written by a little girl in the Warsaw Ghetto. It says, "A little garden, fragrant and full of roses. The path is narrow and a little boy walks along it. A little boy, a sweet boy, like that growing blossom. When the blossom comes to bloom, the little boy will be no more." And that's all she said. Our offer to you this week is a little booklet I discovered, Israel's Right to the Land. Okay, it's not by a Jew, it's not by a member of Begin's cabinet, it happens to be by a Christian minister, Dr. David L. Hawking. We asked his permission, he gave it to us, and we want to just give it to you. Send for it at the Post Office Box 12268, Dallas, Texas, 75225. On this particular program, I don't think you have to worry about the cost of the thing or donations or whatever. I'll leave that to you, but I want you to read carefully Israel's Right to the Land. We're in a different hall of the museum, and we're further progressed chronologically, and now we're at a train platform at Auschwitz. Auschwitz was one of the most effective concentration camps where 2.5 million souls were exterminated, 2.5 million Jews. You know, they arrived in these trains, if they arrived after such a horrible ride, and the train routing itself required the German genius, because to move a train from country to country, to get it to go from France all the way to Auschwitz, which is in far-off Poland, crossing national borders, train track intersections and so forth, was a lot of paperwork, was a lot of busy work, took a lot of talent. They managed to do it, to take these people out there to kill them. What we see here is a separation, men from women. That's not the only separation there's going to be. The men will then pass through, and an officer will look at each one and choose the young and strong men for labor, and all the rest, the older, the sick, whatever, the lame, for extermination, for death. So it's work or death, if they had some work to do. It should be stressed that this inconvenience wasn't always undertaken, because, for example, when the Hungarian transport arrived at Auschwitz, they simply were all killed. The work wasn't available, and they didn't really need the help. With the women, the same distinction, the younger women for work, the infirm, the older for death, except that women with children were always put to death. It was too difficult to separate the women from the children, another inconvenience, and so those were immediately exterminated. The children, you may ask, what happened to them? All of them were exterminated. They were useless for work, and so they were put to death. With the women, there was a third and small category, young and desirable women used for sexual services for the German officers. Not a great many, our expert here, who has taken us through the exhibit and made the facts clear, said there were a small number, dozens of women. Well, for those mere dozens of women, let's give the Nazis full credit. Now, when they got to the camp, they saw a sign that said, Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. That was over the entrance to Auschwitz, and it was kind of a con. If you went under that sign, you thought, well, okay, I'm going to run a machine or something until this awful war is over, and then I'll be free. Work didn't make them free. The workers who were worked to death were eventually exterminated anyway. It's just the last work was gotten out of them. And what work they did at Auschwitz is, I'm going to show you in a moment. More pictures of the separations. It's made clear in this museum by photographs, authentic, that nobody's kidding here and nobody's exaggerating anything. And how can you exaggerate this? There's the gas chamber, the shower, so to say. Even to the end, they were told they were going to take a shower, disinfecting room, whatever, some kind of way to get them to peacefully walk to their deaths. The cans of the deadly gas, Zyklon B, which was dropped by a canister into the roof to gas people in 3 minutes, rooms full of screaming people. And the scene of the people, once they caught on, the gas came in and they would all charge to the other end of the room and climb on each other and try not to breathe the stuff. And of course we're locked in, and the screaming would stop in a short time. And then workers, prisoners like these, who are pushing bodies into an oven. This is some of the forced labor. After all, it's hard to kill 2.5 million people in one camp. 6 million people killed in all, of course. That's a lot of hard work. They were forced to do it. And here are the ovens. Here is a picture of the ovens right in a row, very well organized. Contracts were submitted for efficient ovens from big bakeries and so forth to make ovens that would dispatch people in these kind of numbers efficiently, with fuel efficiency and so on. In this room is an extract from a speech by Reichsfuhrer Himmler, the commander of the SS, the stormtroopers, the most vicious of the Nazi overlords. And he's talking to his fellow officers, it says, on the subject of the mass murders of Jews. This talk was made in Posen on October 4th, 1943. A commander having fellowship with his officers. And he says, it is desirable to talk about this openly among ourselves, but for all that we shall not refer to this matter in public. As regards clearing out the Jews and exterminating the Jewish race, these things are easy to talk about. Quote, the Jewish race is in the process of being exterminated, a party member says. Well, that's all right. That is our program, extermination of the Jews. And we are doing it. We are exterminating them. But all these talkers, not a single one of them has seen or experienced the thing itself. Most of you certainly know what it means when 100 corpses are lying next to each other, or 500, or 1,000. To stand this, and at the same time, apart from a few exceptions due to human weakness, to remain decent fellows. This is what has steeled and hardened us. And he concludes, this thing is a splendid page in our history, which we will never write, and which never shall be written. The Reichsfuhrer was wrong. It has been written, copied word for word, dated, and placed here at the Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. We're well aware of what he told to his officers that day. I'm in the Hall of Names right now. There are big volumes here containing sheets of paper, 3.8 million sheets of paper, each one the record of a human being. For 30 years they've been collected in an effort to humanize those who perished in this Holocaust. In each box we find a little bit of evidence, where somebody was born, where they were killed, who their parents were. It's an almost hopeless task, maybe a little more than half done. If 6 million were killed, we're not quite there yet. But they have relatives, friends. And you see, they died in such a dehumanized way. Their families were taken away from them. Their possessions were taken away. Their jewelry, their clothing. They went into those ovens naked. Even their gold teeth were pulled out for use by the Reich. The hair was taken from women to stuff mattresses. And finally, their names were taken away. And they were given numbers on their arms, permanent tattoos, as if those numbers would have to be used for a long time. Once in a while you do meet somebody these days with his number. Most of those numbers weren't used very long. This effort to individualize these human beings is a holy effort. Here are documents signed by relatives who looked for a grandfather, a mother. Some of my family's in here. It'd be hard for me to find them because my name is so common. Halevi, the Levite. You say Levitt because it sounds very American, but my name is Zelig Halevi. Zola, the Levite. Hundreds of thousands of my relatives are in here. My father came from the old country. He came before the Holocaust. Thank God for that. He came from Latvia. A lot of people were lost in Latvia. Among them, my father's father. He was a shoemaker. And that's what I know about him. Was a shoemaker named Mr. Halevi. I can't find my people, but I can find someone else's people here. Let's look into one of these boxes. I'm afraid a lot of people share a box here, a little like the way they died. Here's somebody, a little girl. Her name, Elitsky. Father's name was Abraham. Her mother's name was Flora. She died in Auschwitz in 1944. She was born in 1938. So was I. It brings up the whole subject of anti-Semitism. I don't know if you know it, you who are faithful viewers of the TV program, but I get an awful lot of anti-Semitism. One day I opened an envelope and the paper inside had just 3 words. You stink, Jew. Not Jew, but Jude, J-U-D-E. The German spelling with the umlaut over the U, the 2 dots. So I'd get it clearly that I'm hearing from a Nazi. And we've got some Nazis in America. Oh, they're pantywaist compared to the originals. Nothing much to be afraid of. But how disgusting to think they're among us. Well, I want to tell you something while I'm here. Don't try to kill me again. Don't try to kill me again. Not because now I'm armed and ready, but because it's wrong. Pharaoh killed me. He took my people in slavery. Nebuchadnezzar killed me. He threw down my temple of God and took away my people of Judah in captivity. Antiochus killed me. He put a Greek statue in my temple and he sacrificed a pig on my altar. Titus killed me. He threw down my second temple. He burned my holy city. He dispersed my people throughout the world. The Muslims killed me. They put their shrine on my land, on my temple site. The Crusaders killed me. They came carrying crosses to teach me peace. They pushed my people into wooden synagogues and burned them to the ground. The inquisitors killed me. Slowly, with a rack and a torch. The Turks killed me. They came here to Israel. They plowed seawater into the valley of Sharon. They desecrated my land. The British killed me. They wouldn't let me come back. After this, when I survived this Holocaust and came here in ships, they sank in the harbors before they would let me back into my land. And now the PLO wants to kill me. Well, let me ask you something. What have we done? Do you remember us attacking anyone? Do you remember us persecuting anyone? We have a longer history than any of you. Not longer, 10 times as long, 20 times as long. We have a pretty good record, except they keep coming to kill us. Don't do this anymore. Remember what they did to us. We came here personally to show it to you, so you would remember. For God's sake, let my people go. And Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.